Now we have the words of Geoffrey Lipman, Assistant Secretary General of UNWTO.
I'm not going to talk about investment per se. What I'm going to talk about is a paradigm shift that is occurring, which, if we don't deal with it, is going to make much of the investment that we're going to talk about comparatively irrelevant. And we actually believe that as you talk over the next 2.5 days, you should be factoring the climate change paradigm shift into account in every discussion that you are going to have. And you should be adjusting your thinking now, because it's my contention that in the next 6 months, we will find that this is changing the way that we think, the way that we behave, and the way that we invest. We've had the science that has been proven by the IPCC, 2,500 scientists around the world, and they're telling us that unless we drastically reduce our greenhouse gas emission by 2050, and starting now, not starting in 2 years or 3 years, starting now, then global warming won't just be a nuisance, won't just be like the challenge of the green revolution of the 1990s, it will actually destroy much of our civilization. And the world's politicians, 100 heads of state at the last UN General Assembly, called on the Secretary General to develop a post-Kyoto action plan, starting at the Bali UN Summit on the Framework Convention for Climate Change next month. So this thing isn't something we're talking about 5 years in the future. Next month, 10,000 people are going to go to Bali, that's the number we're told. 10,000 people are going to go to Bali, and they're going to say, these are the drastic steps we have to take if we want to survive. We unveiled some figures last week which suggest, or last month, which suggest that our industry, our sector is responsible for something like 5% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. And that equates to the 5% that we think we contribute directly in the economy. So we're there. We are an element in this, and we have one component of our industry which we all depend on, which is the aviation sector. And the aviation sector is under extreme pressure. It's under extreme pressure because even though it's a very small percentage of emissions, 2%, it's actually a very visible percentage, and it's up there, and the man in the street sees it up there. And it doesn't have an alternative energy. Everything else you can think of can substitute at some stage. And we produce what we call the Davos Declaration, which will be our charter for a constructive strategic tourism response to climate change. We need now to adapt what we're doing, change all of our practices, to mitigate our behavior, which means to stop doing as much greenhouse gas as we are doing. We have to innovate and take on board new technology, and we have to finance. We have to find a lot of money. The global community has to find a lot of money because the poor countries can't cope with this, and they have enough problems as it is already, and the small island developing states and the coastal zones. And if we don't do something about this to get them the money to make the changes that the rich countries, who are basically the polluters anyhow, that the rich countries make, then they will simply go under. Future investments, I believe, will only be protected if we do this. What's the point of investing if everything's going to disappear?